Michelle Clary. I'm the Director of Ministries here at 5 Point Church, and we are in a series called What's the Point? And the whole purpose of this series for the month of June is just so you will be able to understand some things about 5 Point that maybe you didn't know. Maybe get some information about the church, or just get a little bit more information about the way we do things, or ways that you can get involved or to meet people, or anything like that. So what's the point? So last week, my awesome husband, Lawson Clary, spoke and did a phenomenal job talking about really like outreach and ways to serve and ways that you can get involved with that. But this week we have the awesome opportunity to hear from Pastor Mark. So Pastor Mark, what are you talking about?
We're talking about community this week.
Okay.
And what community is really like. And part of what I really wanted to share, but for the sake of time, the message went in a different direction, was something that I shared at the high school retreat. And I think it's what people don't know. One thing that people probably don't know about me is I love words. I love to learn new things, find new words. And I was fascinated that the words, binary and non-binary, are not originally what they're being used for now. It's originally about stars. That stars exist to orbit with each other, and those are called binary. Then every once in a while, there's non-binary stars that they're in their own orbit. There's no other stars in orbit with them. And what you can learn from them is in our relationships, we were made not to orbit by ourselves. Isolation will kill you. And so we need community. And a lot of times what happens is if we look around at the orbit, the people that are flying in our circles, in our world, you're going to be a sum of the people that you run with, you know. And so we look around at that all the time. That doesn't mean we connect with, at some level, 2,000 adults plus all the kids and our legacy team members every weekend. But there's only a handful of people you actually have community with. And so it matters. And we got to look at each other and say, you know, am I adding to a relationship, or am I sucking the life out of a relationship? Because a lot of times I hear people say in conversations, you know, I just can't get connected. But the reality is most of the time when that happens, it's because they're life suckers. They suck the life out of every relationship that they're in. They only want to talk about themselves. They don't build the other group up. And so that's what I find is I try to look and say, am I adding to Lawson and Michelle? Because y'all are our friends. We don't just get to work with you and for you. You've been our friends for a couple years now.
just
26 is what we just remembered. And so that's what we have to do is if I want good, healthy community in my life, I should look internally. If I feel like it's off, it's probably not a you thing. Because if you've been my friend for 26 years, it's probably something I've done. And I don't even mean like a bad thing. Just, am I being selfish? Every time your phone rings, if what you and Lawson see as our community is Mark needs something, and not how can we, like I'm just calling to check on you. I'm just calling to build you up. A lot of times that's where I think there's strain on relationships. And so the great thing about 5 Point is we have so many opportunities here. And people often think, you know, I'm just not as cool, or I'm just not as this, or I'm just not as this. But if you stop and think, I think Lawson said 4,000 people come through these doors in an average month, maybe even more. And that's just adults alone. There are so many people you can connect with, but you have to put yourself out there.
But I think a lot of times too, with a big church or a mega church that's called, we're like, well, the church is too big for me. Well, in essence, it's not the church being too big for you. It's you not putting yourself out there to create the community. And I know that is something we hear a lot in the church world of, well, that church's too big. They're not going to know who I am. They're not going to know who or what's going on in my life. But in essence, what you're talking about, then it becomes, okay, where are you putting yourself in community within that church? Because we are a big church.
That's right.
But that doesn't mean that people will not know your name, that people will not know who you are or what's going on in your life. But if I don't put myself out there for that, it creates the isolation instead of the community.
I think the challenge is you can come in, sit. What is it? Pastor says, come sit, leave. You can do that,
and it'd be easy because you can get hidden.
Easy come, easy go. Don't have to. But if you want connection, there are so many opportunities. It's actually one of the things we're going to talk about on Sunday is there's so many opportunities to connect here, because it's not just life groups. It's not just legacy teams. It's the fact that we've got a group of guys. I can't even remember how many it is, but it's like 20. And I just added with David this past week, we're going to play golf together, and we went to camp together. There's connections that we made at camp that are lifetime connections, right? And so community's built off of experiences like that. That group of guys that we play golf together, and it's in the 20s.
Yeah.
And it's not, you play with 4, but so we rotate. That's community. We don't have a quote life group together or something like that, but we get together.
Right.
And we text in a group, and we do that. If you'll put yourself out there, there are opportunities everywhere. And here's the other side that I've learned is if you have a problem at any church, this is not a 5-point thing. It'll probably follow you.
Right.
Because the reality is, as long as I'm pointing at everybody else,
if I continue to have the same problem,
I probably should look in the mirror.
Right.
That's the issue. I think it'd be cool for everybody to hear, because we started hanging out as friends, the 4 of us, Leah and myself and you and Lawson, way back in 1998. So I think it'd be cool for them to hear how that happened.
Yeah, so Mark and I were at North Greenville together, and we had
Harvard on the Hill.
I think it was the Old Testament. Is that the first class we had together?
And then we had Western Civ with literally a 150-year-old professor. It was amazing.
And so we had our first class. His charisma reminded me a lot of Daddy's. So, and for people that don't know, Pastor Dean is my dad. So it reminded me a lot of Daddy and being at home. And I was just like, there's just something about Mark that I was like, yeah. And he was dating Leah at the time. I was dating Lawson at the time. So we had just a lot of common interests. And we go to Western Civ, and I don't need my children to listen to this, but I didn't always pay attention. So Lawson would help me out with some of my papers and tests and stuff. In Western Civ.
A really good job of distracting you from paying attention with Blake, one of our other friends who was in the class with us.
I don't even know how we passed the class, to be honest with you. We made it through the class. Yeah. I mean, we made good grades. Lawson helped me make good grades.
If any of y'all are watching this, never do what I'm about to say. But you learn if it's not your major, D means degree.
Well, you just did. Well, what we did learn is how to make community.
That's right.
Because we did become good friends. I became good friends with Leah. But a funny story about that is we go to Lawson at the time is at Furman. Yeah. Leah is not at North Greenville yet.
Was at Bowling Springs High School.
She's a year behind us. And I told Lawson, I know this is surprising to everybody, was very studious then as he is now. So we were going. Yes. I said, Lawson, we're going to go to Waffle House right there at Furman, come meet Mark and Blake and myself, and I think Brandy came, and we were going to go study. And Lawson studied. We did not. We laughed the whole time. And I remember just looking at Lawson, and he was like, this look on his face. Like, are you not having fun? He was like, what are y'all even talking about? And that just made me laugh because...
And we really spoke a foreign language. I mean,
we were just doing our own thing. And I remember Lawson saying, that's probably one of the most dumbest experiences I've ever had in my life. And I thought, you didn't have fun? But what's funny now is you and Lawson are some of the best friends. But it created community then, and how we've been able to stay together. We might not have been the best of friends just because of life happening and moving away, but God brought us all back together.
The point of that is, if you can look back on an experience or a shared experience over time, and we have lots of things going for us. We had a shared experience with that, and Pastor and I do have a similar personality type, and I was drawn to him. 12 years later, I was drawn to him, and he became my mentor, and the rest is history. And we hung out again as adults and went on vacations together. And then, lo and behold, 3 years ago, we got to start working together. And we look for certain things. Are they the coolest? Are they the whatever? Thank the Lord y'all didn't look for the coolest, at least on this case. My wife is pretty amazing, but that doesn't matter to us. Like, we don't look across. And the other thing that I love about y'all, and Leah and I talk about this all the time, is our relationship isn't needy. And that might sound funny to people, but if we don't talk as friends for a week or a month, it's fine. We're friends. We don't need, we don't suck the life out of each other. And that's so needed. And the truth of the matter is, if you're out looking for the perfect friendships or perfect marriages or perfect whatever, or the perfect church, we're not it. You're not going to find it. But if you'll just be you and love Jesus and come in and open yourself up and keep showing up, consistency creates community.
Yeah.
And I think the experiences can't be created, but once they happen, cultivate them.
Totally. What do you think, with going in line with the series, what's the point? What do you think is the main purpose, the main point for community?
The main point is that God did not build us for isolation. I put this in my notes, but I don't think I'm going to use it, but Salvation isn't an invitation for isolation.
That's good.
And so we have to have community. I've never met someone that fell that was in good community. I never met someone's marriage that truly ended that was in good community. Why? Because if my marriage with Leah is falling right now, what I would do is walk. Because y'all are our neighbors, I'd walk to your house and I'd get help.
Yeah.
And true community is I need help and we help each other. It's not needy, it's not every day, but the same thing would be in reverse. Y'all could come to us and we build each other up. And Galatians 6:1 talks about if a brother or sister is caught in an act, what we are to do with it.
Right.
And it's my job isn't to point it out like this. If you're unrepentant, that's a whole different ballgame. But in biblical community, we lift each other up and we help them. And that's literally my testimony. That's what happened with us, with y'all. And that's what I'm so grateful for, community. You cannot do this by yourself. No. And the coolest thing is community starts with my relationship with Jesus.
100%.
Because true fellowship, community, it translates partner. And so I'm partnering, cooperating with the Holy Spirit and then with my brothers and sisters. And I mean, you can't do it with 1,000, but you're meant to do it with some. You have to have a crew.
What do you think creates isolation within the church?
It's the same thing Pastor talks about with sin. This is what I found so interesting in my studies is I don't know if I ever noticed this before, but I think, Pastor talks about all the time how our fellowship, my relationship with Jesus is never severed. I'm his. John 10 says I can't be moved out of his grace. I mean, I've trusted Jesus, but my fellowship is broken immediately. And I think I can tell you from personal experience, once you are in ugly sins, you want to hide and isolate because you're so embarrassed. It's shame. Mm-hmm. Shame is what is the killer of true community. And so I really think that's why this is Mark's opinion, take it for what it's worth. I really think that's what happens with people's community is they want to isolate themselves and something major is taking place inside. That doesn't mean everybody's sinning. Right. It could be just something in the past they never dealt with, right?
Or where they are their walk with Christ.
But when I have the right bond with the Holy Spirit and with the people that I'm supposed to be connected to, life flows from there. And when there's a blockage in the flow, you isolate. Mm-hmm. And it's a natural tendency. We all tend to do that, but we have to have it. Community is not just something that sounds cool. It's something that we have to have. So I hope everybody can experience
and I think something that people realize, if I go to that church, then it's community. But it's way more than just showing up. Like you said, come sit, leave. That's not community. That's going to church. Yep. There's a big difference. And I think one thing that I'm excited about with this series is people can actually start to see the ways that they can create community within 5 Point, because every Sunday we don't have time to tell you every opportunity that you have to get involved in.
Well, and that's even what I told Lawson Sunday after his message. One of the parts I thought was so good was it's hard for them to know, y'all, everything that we do.
Right.
Because we don't have time to, Bo put the ticker up. I thought it was so cool.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I wanted to see.
And we still didn't get to see everything. I mean,
but it's so fast, we can't see everything. That really, community could be more things than the ticker had up.
Totally.
And so there's opportunities out there. If you want it, put yourself out there. It's there for you.
Yeah, because I don't people realize that we have groups. We have ministries. Like we have ministries for Vintage Group, which is for our senior citizens. We have single ministries. We have classes that we have to find out more information about like who we are as a church, but then also how to dig deeper in your relationship with Christ. There's so many ways.
This past weekend, I got to do a wedding for one of our amazing legacy team members in Kid Point. The community that they had at the wedding was amazing.
Yeah.
It's everywhere.
That's what it's about.
It's in our teams. If you'll put yourself out there, community will follow.
Yeah.
And that's the whole key.
And that's literally what's the point?
That's right.
And when we talk about our 5 purposes, community may not be the word for it, but fellowship is. Yep. And with that whole situation you're talking about with the Kid Point volunteers, they've served together for years.
Yes. It's a family.
It's a family.
It really
and I think people, as I said at the very beginning of this podcast, was we forget or we talk about it being a big church. Well, no.
Right.
You create.
That's a circle.
You're the one that makes it a big church.
Yep.
The numbers really don't mean anything. It's what you do with your walk with Jesus and how you get involved. That truly is the point.
I feel like the only way you get lost truly is come sit leave.
Yeah.
Once you get connected, everything changes.
Yeah.
And so that's our encouragement to y'all. Please come get connected, put yourself out there and watch what happens.
Yeah. So this Sunday, don't miss this Sunday as we head into week 2, or I guess it's actually week 3 of What's the Point with Pastor Mark, as we're talking about community. And our prayer for this whole series is for you to be able to find your ways to get involved at 5 Point in new ways that you may not even known about, or even new ways to venture out into those next steps. So we cannot wait to worship with you guys on Sunday.
See you Sunday.